there, curious minds, and welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling when you're incredibly stressed and then, boom, you catch a cold?
Oh, yeah. Or you hear someone say, I think my stress is making me sick.
Exactly. Well, today we're taking a deep dive into that very idea, the fascinating, often surprising, and incredibly complex connection between your mind, your stress levels, and your body's immune system.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. We're unraveling a key chapter from Robert M. Sapolsky's classic, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, specifically his insights on immunity, stress, and disease.
A foundational text in the field.
Absolutely. Our mission, to sort of cut through the noise, give you the scientific facts, and leave you truly informed about how your brain and your body's defenses are constantly, intimately talking to each other.
Indeed. And what's truly fascinating, I think, is how this relatively new field of psychoneuroimmunology, quite a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
But basically, it studies the conversation between your brain, nervous system, and immune system.
Yeah.
And it's completely reshaped our understanding.
How so?
Well, it challenged these old ideas that these systems operated, totally independently.
Right, like the immune system was just off doing its own thing.
Exactly. So we'll explore some of the groundbreaking evidence that really convinced scientists of this profound link, and then break down exactly how it works.
Okay, let's unpack this. The idea that your brain, your thoughts, could actually directly influence your immune system. It sounds almost, well, too simple, maybe. But the evidence goes back quite a way, doesn't it?
It does. Even things like an artificial rose triggering an allergic response in someone just from the sight of it.
Wow. So the mind literally fooled the body's defenses.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The brain has this remarkable capacity to influence immune tissues. It uses two main pathways.
Okay.
The autonomic nervous system, think direct nerve fibers into immune organs like the spleen or lymph nodes, and then a whole range of hormones. Immune cells even have receptors for hormones released by your pituitary gland, which is directly controlled by the brain.
So the brain is definitely involved. It's not separate at all.
Not at all. It's very much in the immune system's business. And this connection became, I'd say, undeniably clear with the concept of conditioned immunosuppression.
Conditioned, like Pavlov's dogs.
Exactly like Pavlov's dogs. In animal experiments, you give an immune-suppressing drug alongside some unique stimulus of this, maybe an artificially flavored drink.
Oh, hey.
After doing that a few times, you take away the drug completely. You just give the flavored drink.
Yeah.
And the animal's immune function drops just from the drink. The brain learned to suppress the immune system on cue.
That is wild, just based on a taste.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting. In 1982, Robert Ader and Nicholas Cohen did this experiment that just, stunned scientists.
What did they do?
They used this conditioning technique to extend the lifespans of mice with an autoimmune disease. So these mice had overactive immune systems attacking their own bodies.
Right. They'd normally need drugs for that.
Correct. They needed an immune-suppressing drug to survive. But Ader and Cohen found they could substitute that conditioned stimulus, the flavored drink, for the actual drug.
No way.
Yes. And it was enough to alter the mice's immunity, helping them live longer.
Yeah.
Just the symbol of the drug was having a real biological effect.
That really changes things. It shows the brain's power over this system.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Not just a link.
Yeah.
It's evidence of deep, almost manipulative control. This work really forced a rethink. If a fake rose or a flavored drink can change immune function.
Then real-world stress definitely can too.
Precisely. Which brings us to, how does stress actually do that? To understand the impact, we need a quick look at the immune system itself.
Okay, immune system 101.
Basically, its job is defense.
Yeah.
Against invaders, viruses, bacteria, parasites. It has to constantly tell self, meaning your own body tissues.
The non-self, the intruder.
Exactly. It's an incredibly sophisticated biological army, really.
I like the analogy of an elite security team. They know everyone who belongs, and anyone without the right ID is immediately flagged as an intruder.
That's a good way to put it.
And the really cool part is that it remembers past intruders, right? So it's even better prepared next time. That's why vaccines work.
That's the principle of immunological memory, yes. So it's a whole orchestra of cells and chemicals working together.
How do they communicate so effectively across the whole body?
It's all about specialized white blood cells. You've got your T cells, which are kind of like your direct combat troops.
Okay.
When a scout cell, a macrophage, spots an invader, it basically flags it for the T cells. These T cells then multiply like crazy and release chemical signals.
Like alarms?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Signals to activate killer cells that directly destroy the threat. This whole process is called cell-mediated immunity.
Got it. T cells, macrophages, killer cells.
Then there are the B cells. Think of them as your antibody factories.
Antibodies. Those Y-shaped proteins.
That's them. Stimulated by the alarm raised by the macrophage and T helper cells, B cells churn out these specialized proteins called antibodies.
And they stick to the invaders.
Exactly. Imagine them as custom-designed sticky notes, or maybe like a key fitting a specific lock on the invader. They attach, neutralize the invader, or mark it for destruction by other cells. That's antibody-mediated immunity.
So T cells for direct combat, B cells for making antibodies.
Broadly, yes. And they're constantly talking to each other using this complex chemical messaging network, things like interleukins and interferons, sounding alarms and coordinating defenses everywhere.
It sounds amazing when it works, but what happens when it goes wrong?
That's the downside. Sometimes the system makes mistakes. The most problematic is autoimmunity.
Ah, right. That's when the immune system attacks your own body.
Precisely. It mistakes self for non-self, leading to diseases like multiple sclerosis or juvenile diabetes, where the body's own tissues are targeted.
Okay, so we have this incredible, sophisticated, but occasionally error-prone defense system. Now, back to stress. How does something like, exam pressure or a fight with someone actually interfere with all that?
It's a great question. And we've known for a long time, almost 60 years, thanks to Hans Selye, that stress directly impacts immune tissues.
See, Lily. He's the stress research pioneer.
He is. He observed that organs like the thymus gland, remember, where T cells mature, that it would visibly shrink or atrophy in stressed rats. That was some of the first hard evidence.
So it wasn't just a minor effect.
No. Since then, we've learned that stress disrupts a whole range of immune functions. It can hinder the formation of new immune cells, stop them being released into circulation, reduce antibody production, mess with the chemical communication. It's like the body is actively disarming parts of its own defense.
Actively disarming. And you mentioned hormones before. Is that the main way it happens?
That's the best documented pathway, yes. Yeah. It's primarily via glucocorticoids.
Those main stress hormones. Cortisol in humans.
Exactly. They have multiple effects. They cause that thymus shrinkage Selye saw. They halt the formation of new lymphocytes in the thymus. They inhibit the release of those crucial chemical messengers, like interleukins.
Making the immune cells less responsive.
Less responsive, yes. And they even cause circulating lymphocytes to be sort of yanked out of circulation and stored away.
Wow. But you said something even more dramatic before. They can actually kill lymphocytes.
They can. It's a process called programmed cell death, or apoptosis.
Like a cellular suicide mission? How does that work?
Well, glucocorticoids get inside the lymphocyte and trigger it to synthesize a special suicide protein. This protein literally chops the cell's own DNA into tiny pieces.
Good grief, it just destroys its own blueprint.
Essentially, yes. It shuts the cell down permanently. It's a very effective way to quickly reduce immune cell numbers.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit. This seems totally counterintuitive. Why on earth would our bodies actively sabotage our own defenses during a crisis when we might actually need them more?
Right. It feels backwards. Is it just a glitch, or is there some weird evolutionary logic?
There must be some reason.
People have tried to figure it out. The simplest idea, that it's just to save energy for fight or flight, doesn't really hold up.
Why not?
Because stress actively destroys immune components, like killing lymphocytes. It doesn't just put them on hold to save fuel. It's more aggressive than that.
Okay, so saving energy is out. What else?
Well, one of the most influential ideas comes from a researcher named Alan Monk. He proposed that maybe immunosuppression during stress happens to avoid the danger of autoimmune diseases.
Ah, okay. So the idea is in a high alarm stress state, the immune system might get too active, too trigger happy.
And mistakenly launch an attack against your own body. Friendly fire, essentially.
So immunosuppression acts like a brake, preventing that overshoot.
That's the core idea. Monk later refined it, suggesting it might be particularly important during recovery from infectious stressors, when the immune system really does ramp up, sometimes excessively. For short-term physical stress, maybe it's less critical.
Interesting. I also remember reading a theory about, appearances. Don't look weak on the savannah.
Ah, yes, the don't limp hypothesis.
Right. If a stressed animal suppresses the swelling and redness, the inflammation from an injury, it avoids looking vulnerable to predators.
It's an evocative image. Definitely have some charm. But, like the energy-saving idea, it doesn't fully explain the active destruction of immune cells and tissues that we see with glucocorticoids. Suppressing outward signs is one thing. Actively dismantling the system is another level.
Makes sense. So lots of theories, but maybe no single perfect answer yet.
Probably not one single answer, no.
Mm.
But what's really telling is this feedback loop. During an infection, your immune system releases chemical messengers, like interleukin-1,
Oh,
which actually travels to the brain and stimulates the release of stress hormones, including glucocorticoids.
which then suppress the immune system.
Exactly. So the immune system itself sometimes seems to actively call for its own suppression.
Wow, that fits really well with Monk's idea about preventing overshoot, especially during infections.
It does seem to align quite nicely, suggesting a complex, self-regulating brake system.
Okay, so we've explored the mechanisms and the why for short-term stress. But what about the big one? Chronic, long-term stress. Can that sustained pressure really suppress our immune system enough to actually make us more vulnerable to disease?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And it's harder to answer definitively. We know that severe immune suppression, like you see in AIDS, is absolutely devastating.
Of course.
The question is about the more subtle effects of chronic stress. Things like ongoing work pressure, difficult relationships, even just the daily grind for some people, or more moderate stressors like college exams or caregiving for a sick relative. These can cause measurable changes in immune markers. But does it translate into genuinely getting sick more often?
And the evidence seems to be leaning towards, yes, it can.
It does seem that way, yes. We see pretty clear links accumulating from different lines of research, both massive stressors, things like the death of a spouse, divorce, major depression, the intense strain of being a long-term caregiver.
Those big life events.
Right. And even more common everyday stressors, like final exams for students. They've all been linked to measurable decreases in immune function in various studies.
And does that link to actual illness?
For the extreme stressors, yes. We even see increased mortality rates in the period following, say, bereavement. Stressful periods have also been noted to precede the onset or flare-ups of immune-related disorders like multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
And there are studies, quite famous ones now, showing that people under significant psychological stress are demonstrably less resistant to infections like the common cold when exposed to the virus.
Less resistant, so they actually get sick more easily.
That's what the data suggests. Stress also seems to play a role, maybe not in causing, but in accelerating cancer. It causes faster tumor growth in lab rodents, and it's been associated with increased cancer risk in humans years after major life stressors or depressions.
And you mentioned social connections.
Yes, that's a critical piece. Fewer social connections consistently predict shorter life expectancy. The impact is apparently comparable to risk factors like smoking or obesity.
Wow, that's significant.
It appears so. We even see biological correlates in animal models. Infant monkeys separated from their mothers show depressed immune function. It underscores how vital that social buffering is.
Okay, but you also said it's complicated. We need to be careful about jumping to conclusions, right? Studying this isn't straightforward.
Absolutely right to stress the nuance. Researchers usually think in terms of that four-step sequence: stressor, stress response, immune change, disease outcome. But studying each step is challenging.
How so? What are the main hurdles?
Well, first, stress exposure, step one. Animal studies often use stressors far more extreme than what's ethical or even typical for humans, and people vary hugely in what they even perceive as stressful.
And how you measure it matters too, right? Like asking people after they get sick.
Exactly. That's a huge problem with retrospective studies. Asking someone who's ill about past stress, well, their memory might be biased, or they might be searching for reasons for their illness, leading to potentially inflated links. Prospective studies where you follow healthy people over time are much better, but they're incredibly expensive and take years, even decades.
Okay, so measuring stress is tricky. What about the next steps?
Steps 2 and 3, the stress response and immune competence. While massive stressors do cause massive immune suppression, moderate stress is trickier. Sometimes it causes only moderate immune reduction, and sometimes maybe even stimulates certain parts of the immune system. It's not always a simple down arrow.
And step 4. Does a change in immune cells automatically mean more disease?
That's step 4, linking the immune profile to disease, and it's surprisingly fuzzy. Immunologists aren't actually sure what small, subtle dips in immune function really mean for your overall health risk. Our immune system has a lot of redundancy built in, so maybe there's a threshold massive suppression causes disease, but minor fluctuations might not matter much in the grand scheme.
Okay. And lab studies versus real life?
Another big one. Lab studies often use induced diseases in animals. They give them a tumor or an infection. That's different from how diseases arise spontaneously in the real world. Plus, not all links from stress to illness have to go through the immune system, right?
Good point. Like someone who's bereaved might stop exercising or eating well.
Exactly. Or maybe unhealthy people just naturally have fewer social connections to begin with. Or genetics could play a role. Maybe couples share genetic predispositions to certain illnesses. Lots of confounding factors to untangle.
Okay, so it's complex, lots of caveats. But despite all that, you're saying some very careful studies have managed to control for many of these things and still show significant links.
Yes, precisely. Some findings are quite robust even with these challenges.
Can you remind us of the really strong ones?
Definitely the social relationships data. That link between having fewer social connections and shorter life expectancy holds up remarkably well across large studies, with that impact size comparable to smoking or obesity.
That's really striking.
It is. Then there's the bereavement data, particularly the finding about higher mortality among grieving parents who are already widowed or divorced, suggesting social support acts as a crucial buffer.
Right, the support network matter.
Immensely. And the link between major depression and increased cancer risk, sometimes appearing up to 20 years later, has also been shown in large prospective studies.
20 years. Wow.
And finally, David Spiegel's famous study at Stanford. Women with metastatic breast cancer who participated in supportive group therapy lived, on average, twice as long as a control group who received standard medical care only.
Twice as long. That's huge. But you added a caveat.
Yes, and it's important. Stiegel himself noted this could be due to factors beyond just stress reduction, like maybe the women in therapy were more diligent about taking their medications or adopted healthier behaviors encouraged by the group. It doesn't necessarily mean positive thinking alone doubled their lifespan. But the finding is powerful and has spurred a lot of research. The results haven't always been replicated consistently across all types of cancer or therapy groups.
Okay, that clarifies things. Now, building on that complexity, let's dive into those two specific areas you mentioned, autoimmune diseases and cancer. Starting with autoimmune diseases, it seems logical, right? If stress suppresses the immune system.
You'd think it would help autoimmune diseases, which are caused by an overactive immune system.
Exactly. But some reports claim stress actually makes things like multiple sclerosis or juvenile diabetes worse. What gives?
It is a real paradox. And it's true that doctors often use massive doses of glucocorticoids, synthetic stress hormones, as a first-line treatment for autoimmune disorders, precisely because they suppress the immune system, though they have serious side effects.
So high doses help, but everyday stress might hurt. How?
Well, the key might be the level of glucocorticoids. Stress doesn't always mean massive, overwhelming hormone release. Mild or moderate stress-induced elevations of glucocorticoids have, in science studies, actually been reported to stimulate certain aspects of the immune system.
Stimulate? How could that happen?
One theory is that these lower doses might selectively disrupt certain inhibitory or suppressor cells within the immune system. So by taking out the brakes, you might paradoxically get a net increase in some types of immune activity.
Ah, okay. So it's not just on or off. It's more nuanced depending on the dose and context.
Exactly. This could potentially explain why some people experience worsening autoimmune symptoms during stressful periods, but honestly, it's an area that still needs a lot more careful research to fully understand.
Understood. Now let's turn to cancer risk. This is such a sensitive topic, causes so much anxiety. The big question, does stress cause cancer?
It's a vital question, and based on the evidence, the answer seems to be probably not directly. It appears stress has relatively little to do with whether a tumor gets started in the first place.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring.
It is. Where stress seems to have a greater impact is on the rate of growth of tumors once they are already established.
So it makes existing tumors grow faster.
The evidence points strongly in that direction, especially from animal experiments. They're quite convincing. You see faster tumor growth rates in mice kept in noisy, stressful cages compared to calm ones. Rats given inescapable electric shocks become less able to reject transplanted tumors. Even putting rats on a stressful rotating platform accelerates tumor growth. And importantly, if you substitute glucocorticoids for the actual stressor, you often get the same effect, faster tumor growth.
Okay, so the link between stress hormones and faster tumor growth seems solid, at least in animals. How does it work? What are the mechanisms?
There seem to be several ways stress might help tumors grow. First, there's the immunologic route we've discussed. Stress suppresses certain immune cells, including natural killer cells, or NK cells.
And they're important for cancer.
Very. NK cells are specialized immune cells thought to be crucial for recognizing and destroying tumor cells, especially preventing them from spreading or metastasizing. So suppressing NK cells could give tumors an advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Second, there's a non-immunologic pathway involving blood supply. Glucocorticoids at the concentrations seen during stress actually seem to promote angiogenesis.
Angiogenesis.
Yeah,
That's the growth of new blood vessels.
exactly. Tumors are incredibly hungry. They need a lot of energy. Angiogenesis allows new blood vessels to grow into the tumor, delivering the oxygen and nutrients it needs to expand rapidly. Stress hormones seem to help this process.
Wow. So stress hormones help feed the tumor.
In a way, yes. And there's a third mechanism, also related to energy supply. During stress, glucose levels rise in your bloodstream energy for your muscles for fight or flight, remember?
Right.
Well, Sapolsky's lab actually discovered that experimental tumors are really good at grabbing this glucose out of the bloodstream, often even before the muscles can get it. So the body's stress response, meant to fuel escape, inadvertently ends up fueling the tumor.
Good grief. So suppressing killer cells, helping grow blood vessels, and diverting energy. Stress seems to help tumors in multiple ways.
It looks that way. But again, some important caveats. Stress seems to have its most pronounced effects on tumors caused by viruses. Most human cancers, however, are thought to arise from carcinogens, chemicals, radiation, etc. The link might be weaker there. And again, most of the really strong evidence comes from experimental studies with major stressors and induced tumors in animals. The connection is likely less dramatic for normal, everyday stressors and spontaneous cancers in humans.
Right. Important context. So the evidence is compelling. Stress does have an impact. Social support clearly helps, but it's nuanced. And this is where the conversation can really go off the rails if we're not careful, isn't it?
Precisely. It's so important to maintain perspective. Yes, prolonged stress affects the immune system and disease processes. Yes, interventions like building social support are beneficial, but these effects, statistically speaking, are rarely very large.
So they're part of the picture, but not the whole picture.
Exactly. Stress reduction and social support should be seen as important adjuncts, helpful additions to mainstream medical treatment, not as substitutes for it. An observation can be scientifically correct, but not necessarily of overwhelming importance in determining the outcome of a serious illness.
And this brings us to that crucial point about the danger of overstating these connections. The flip side can be really harmful.
It can be truly poisonous. We need to critically analyze claims that dramatically oversimplify these complex links. A prominent example discussed by Sapolsky is Bernie S. Siegel and his book Love, Medicine, and Miracles.
I remember that book being very popular. What was the core message?
The premise was essentially healing through love, achieving miraculous cures if patients had enough courage, love, and spirit. He wrote about things like asking anesthetized patients not to bleed or deceased patients returning as birds, things far outside conventional science.
Okay, but where did it become harmful?
The damaging core, the really poisonous flip side, was the implication sometimes stated quite directly that if a patient wasn't cured, it was somehow their fault. It was due to their insufficient courage, love, or spirit.
Oh, wow. That's blaming the victim.
Absolutely. He effectively blamed patients for their illness, suggesting things like repressed feelings causing breast cancer, or a lack of spirituality causing leukemia, or patients somehow wanting their illness, or lacking the courage to do a therapeutic drawing exercise.
That's deeply problematic.
Extremely. He even controversially suggested childhood cancer could somehow be linked to parental conflict perceived by the child while still in the womb. His overarching and frankly infamous statement was, "There are no incurable diseases, only incurable people."
Which is the exact opposite of a compassionate scientific approach.
Completely. It contrasts sharply with a truly scientific and humane view, which emphasizes understanding the person with the illness, supporting them through it, not blaming them for its existence or progression.
Did his methods actually show any benefit in studies?
Critically, no. The only published peer-reviewed study of his exceptional cancer patients program, after correcting for biases like patients joining early when they were already doing better, found no statistically significant effect on survival time.
And how did Siegel respond to that?
He reportedly dismissed the statistics, saying he preferred to deal with individuals and effective techniques. It's a stark warning about how misinterpreting or overstating the mind-body connection can lead to blaming individuals for their suffering, adding an immense psychological burden.
It really underscores the need for scientific rigor and compassion. And to drive that point home, Sapolsky includes a really sobering historical example, doesn't he, about SIDS.
Yes, a truly grotesque piece of medical history that highlights the dangers of flawed assumptions and poor methodology. It concerns sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS.
Where healthy babies would tragically die in their sleep.
Exactly. Back in the 19th century, it was a complete mystery. So in the 1890s, a pathologist tried to understand it by doing autopsies on infants who had died from SIDS and comparing them to what he thought was normal infant autopsy material.
Okay, seems reasonable so far. But there was a catch with the normal babies.
A fatal catch. His source for normal infant bodies was essentially the bodies of the very poor obtained through grave robbers initially, and later through laws forcing poorhouses to turn over unclaimed bodies for medical study.
Oh dear. So these weren't average healthy infants who died accidentally.
Not at all. These normal infants had typically died from chronic stressful diseases, common among the impoverished, things like severe diarrheal disorders, malnutrition, tuberculosis. And what effect does chronic stress and illness have on the thymus gland?
It shrinks it, like in Salai's rats.
Precisely. So the pathologist, completely unaware that chronic stress shrinks the thymus, was comparing SIDS infants who usually had no prior illness or major stressors, and thus had normal, healthy, larger thymuses, to these poor infants whose thymuses were abnormally small due to their stressful lives and chronic diseases. He tragically got the baseline wrong. He assumed the shrunken thymuses were the normal size.
So he concluded that SIDS babies died because their normal, healthy thymuses were too big.
Exactly. He incorrectly concluded that SIDS was caused by an abnormally large thymus pressing on the trachea and suffocating the child.
And the solution was horrific.
It was. Based on this flawed conclusion, the tragic medically sanctioned treatment that emerged was for doctors to start irradiating infants' throats with X-rays to deliberately shrink their healthy thymuses.
Oh no.
Decades later, it became clear this practice had caused tens of thousands of cases of thyroid cancer in those individuals as they grew up.
That is just devastating. A catastrophic error based on a wrong assumption about normal.
It's a chilling lesson.
So what are the really profound takeaways from that awful story for us today, especially thinking about stress and immunity?
Several crucial things, I think. First, the absolute critical importance of being extremely careful and certain about your baseline, about what constitutes the norm before drawing conclusions, especially medical ones.
Don't assume your control group is truly normal without checking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second, it shows how completely unexpected confounding variables, in this case, socioeconomic status and chronic illness affecting the normal baseline, can creep in and lead to devastating errors if you're not vigilant.
And the need for rigorous science.
Always. The enduring need for rigorous, objective, carefully controlled scientific inquiry, even when looking at something seemingly simple like how big is a normal thymus. The consequences of getting it wrong can be immense and tragic.
Wow, what a journey we've been on. From, conditioned immune responses in mice with flavored water, all the way to the profound impact of chronic stress, the importance of social support, and even that deeply disturbing medical misstep from history. It's been an incredible deep dive into the brain-body connection.
It really has, and I think the main takeaway is that the link between our minds, our stress levels, and our immunity is undeniably real, and it's incredibly complex.
Yeah, definitely not simple cause and effect.
Not at all. The effects are often nuanced, context-dependent, and they require really careful scientific scrutiny to understand the full picture, avoiding those easy oversimplifications.
And that's precisely why it's so important, isn't it, to be able to sort the good information from the bad. While it's empowering to understand how our bodies work and how stress might affect us,
it's equally crucial to approach these connections with that scientific rigor we talked about. We need to avoid those tempting oversimplifications or, even worse, the dangerous misattributions of blame that can come from misunderstanding this science.
Blaming people for being sick is never okay.
Never. So perhaps a final thought for you to consider, thinking about everything we've discussed, all the historical biases, the complexities, the potential for misinterpretation. How might a deeper awareness of these issues change the way you interpret health studies, or even just the personal health stories you hear from now on?
That's a great question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into immunity, stress, and disease. We really hope this has given you a clearer, more informed perspective on these intricate connections. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep learning.